Just how good is freshman wide receiver Barion Brown, and how good can we project him moving forward? That's what we're going to do on today's video at the Devy Royale here on the YouTube channel. I am your host, as always, Kevin Coleman, and let's take a look at Barion. All right, let's dive in. So Barion Brown, what can we talk about him and what has he done this year? So when we're just looking at Barion Brown, like he came to Kentucky in an offense that many expected to kind of be a little bit better than it has been this year, right? When we're talking about Kentucky, they definitely underachieved this season. But Barion is one of those guys that really stepped up. Him and Dane Key, other freshman wide receiver, they came into this offense and they were ready to go. And Barion led this team in receiving yards. We'll go over his numbers in a minute. Dane Key was second. So we've seen kind of these guys step up. Will Levis was there. They had a really bad offensive line. Obviously, Chris Rodriguez was suspended at the beginning. But there is something to say about Kentucky moving forward. What are they, right? And then what can this project to? So let's just take a look at what he did, and then we'll get into kind of where he's at. Now, as a prospect, just to kind of go over him as a prospect in high school, he came in as a four-star kid, and he was number 9 wide receiver in terms of the Tennessee's third best player in that area, number 16 wide receiver on the composite. So he came in, he had offers to Alabama, TCU, some other places, but he chose Kentucky. So he's staying close because he's from Nashville, Tennessee, and that's where he goes. Now, what has he done this year? So the games that he's played this year, he's 45 receptions, 604 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And he's done very, very well in terms of what we're looking at kickoff returning. And that has been interesting. He has a touchdown there. He has 424 yards on kickoff return. Punt returns, he hasn't had that same success, but he's been a very, very good return man specialist on this team. Now, in the big games that he had, he against Northern Illinois, he had 4 catches, 102 yards. Ole Miss, 2 catches, 81 yards. Mississippi State, 7 catches, 62 yards. And in Georgia, against Georgia, one of the best defenses in the country, 10 catches, 145 yards and a touchdown. Louisville, he had 4 catches, 44 yards and a touchdown. So he has shown out in games that you're like, hey, he has some potential, right? Like he has value. And so that is the thing when we're looking forward is like, how do we project Barion? Like, what is he moving forward? What can we say about him? And what does he do well? So let's take a look at this. And this freshman class for wide receivers, it is an interesting class. Like when you're looking at just top to bottom, when we're trying to project the freshman class and we're trying to move forward as we get closer to the offseason, as we move close to the Devy drafts, and I'm going to talk about where he went at the outlook of like where he goes in this area. Like, we have Evan Stewart, Luther Burden in there. You have some other guys like DJ Allen has looked okay. McMillan from Arizona has looked okay. What's Kobe Prentice, Antonio Williams? Like, how good are these guys and where do they fall around? Like, Barion can be one of these kids that shoots up these draft boards and we end up talking about him. So let's talk about what he does well. So first, his athleticism pops off. Like when you're looking at just his numbers and his athleticism there, in the 100 meters recorded, it was a 10.49. 200 meters is 21.37 seconds. So we've seen that. He's very capable of having that elite track profile that we see. And we see that in his speed. We see it in his kickoff return ability. We see it in his punt return ability. We see it in his yak ability, right? Like, but he is one of the fastest players on the field at any time he touches the ball. So we see this. He's got that little bit of a slippery, he's got that slip ability. Like he can get through guys, big playability there. When you watch him play, like he catches the football, we think he's going to score every single time. And he saw that, right? And I think one thing that I've seen progress, so watching his tape, going through the all 22 and talking about him, he has progressed so much as a receiver from that first game that he played against Miami, Ohio, where he had 3 catches, 45 yards. And in that last game that we saw against Louisville or even against Georgia, like he has looked so much better and he's progressed so much. He's seen that big playability in there. Now, the one thing I think that stands out for me in terms of what he does well as a receiver, his ball tracking is really elite. So some things that stand out to me. So we talked about this on a mailbag recently about what you look for receivers. He has really, really ball tracking ability. Like he's not just like a catch guy who's going to go. Like he can make tough catches over the shoulder, different angles. Like he's got really good catch radius. Like there's a lot of different things that he does well in terms of his ball tracking ability. And he's got good hands. Like there's things when you watch it in PFF grade, everything that you see from him, like hands, ball tracking, big play. Like there are all those things that you see that you're like, man, this kid can be really, really good. And he's not just a gimmicky guy. Like he is a receiver. Now, There are some things he needs to work on. We're going to dive into that. But he's not a gimmick. Like, this kid is a receiver first and foremost. I know that he came in. People didn't really know where he was going to be in terms of, like, he could have been a corner. They talked about it, like a coverage gunner guy, has that ability there. But he's going to come in here, and so he's developing. And I think that is how we project forward, right? Now, as far as weaknesses, and again, just things that we need to see that him do a little bit better. Size, hey, he's not a big kid. Like, he was listed at 173 on 247 Sports and coming into high school, and now he's listed at 166. So how big is he, right? I think that is the question. Now, he's got the size, 6'1", like he's got the height, but then that he's got to put on some muscle. Like, he needs to get in that. Hopefully, if he can get that 180 range, that'd be great. And I think he can, like when you're talking about projecting forward and getting that strength. So that's just something that you'd want to see a little bit on him. Like, okay, moving forward, what can we do? Because we saw this with Xavier Worthy, right? Like, we've seen this with kids before where we're like, hey, they're going to put on weight and they don't. And then we see a little bit of a regression their sophomore year. So can he kind of put on that weight and go there? So if he's got to get over that hump, right? He's got to get into that area where he's getting that 180 range. I would love that to keep that athleticism. Release. So there's a couple things wrong. Like, again, he gets hit off his routes a little bit when you're watching him. Now, not a lot of teams played him in press coverage, but physical corners definitely did this. Length, size, those type of things. Like, they can push him off. Now, that's just something that he's going to have to do with strength, and he's going to have to get that ability to get a little bit better. But overall, he was there. Now, he's raw. So, like, it's not a weakness. It's just something he's going to work on. Like I said, he's progressed. Like, when you're looking at the tape and you're like, hey, you see that progression there, right? And you're seeing what he was able to do. Like, he's getting better, but he is very raw in terms of what he played in high school, where he was at. He was kind of like a running back. He had 897 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns on 59 carries. He only caught 22 passes. And then defensively, he had 24 tackles. Like, he was an all-around player on that thing. And so he hasn't really specified and solidified, like, hey, I'm a receiver. Like, he hasn't done that. Now he is. So that's something that he's going to have to progress and look forward to and say, hey, I've been playing receiver. This is what I am. And I think he can, like, when we're talking about what he does. Now, let's take the tape. Let's check it and let's go over it. So you're going to see there good ball tracking here, able to bring it in. And he, you know what? Even though he's at 166 or where he's at, he was able to take hits this year. Like, when you watch the tape, he got popped a few times and you're like, oh, he can take those hits. He can do it. I thought he did very well of getting across the middle of the field and finding zones. So when I was going through the all 22, I thought he did that really well as well. Like, he knows the game really well. Obviously, this is kind of where his bread and butter, like, this is like where he's going to, the bubble screens in college, getting him out in space and doing that, like, that is where he's going to excel at. And you got to be careful with these guys. Like, we think of JoJo Earl. We watched JoJo Earl for Alabama. I watched him in high school. Like, oh my God, he can do this. I think he's more nuanced than JoJo was. I think he's has a little bit of a higher ceiling in terms of just receiving ability than him. He's got good hands, good ball tracking, able to see that ball in. Like, those are the type of things that Barion does really well, like, as just a receiver. And when you're looking at him and you're talking about what he does well, like reading his blocks, athleticism, taking the hits, and then scoring. Again, here, finds it here, finds the open zone, able to get it in. And then that is that next level right there. That's next level speed, right? So he knows where he's going. So he's nuanced. Now, open release, doesn't get hit here. This is why we're talking about, hey, things he needs to work on. Open release, easy. The playing zone, obviously, cover two, comes up right before the safety. But this extra speed, this burning speed right here is where you're like, okay, Barion can keep doing that. If he's going to keep progressing as a wide receiver, then we can say, hey, he can really, really excel there. Another one, bubble screen, kind of makes a guy miss, kind of doesn't. Then he has this kickoff return ability. Now, when you're talking college fantasy and those type of things, you're going to get points for this. So he is a weapon, right? We're thinking Rondale, these guys have come from the Kentucky, these areas. What can they be? Like, he can do this too. So not only is he a good receiver, he's an athlete. And where is he going? Okay, so these are the things that you like to see about him, catching in traffic there. But I'm telling you right now, just from my perspective of, like, as a receiver, ball tracking, he has it. Like, he has that ability to kind of be that real true receiver. Now, outlook, let's talk about where he's going. So I did a recent mock, and it's gonna come on the channel here in another week. And I said, all right, let's get rid of 23 guys. Let's draft only 24, 25, 26 kids. And so when you're looking at where he's going in terms of Devy drafts right now, he got drafted by Lucas McLean. He's a really, really good Devy analyst and just a Devy person in general. He got drafted at 308. So he got drafted right ahead of Antonio Williams in that class. So when you're looking at class-wise and where they're at, like, he is essentially, he got drafted as the wide receiver 3 in this class. And that is that's shot up, right? When you're looking at what he's been able to do, like he's getting drafted now as a wide receiver 3 in this 25 class and where he's at. So he's definitely going up there. Him and Antonio Williams are kind of jumping around right there. And when you think of the receivers in this class, like you could be talking about it. Now, there's rumors about him transferring. I don't know if that's going to be true. The transfer portal is chaos, so we don't know necessarily what that's going to look like. But I do think that Barion Brown can elevate himself into that top 5 category and be that top 5 wide receiver. So we appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Hit that like and subscribe button. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, get us in the comments. Let us know. We're giving you guys content every day, it seems like, on this channel. And we appreciate it. And we're going to be fully diving into Devy and rookie draft and all this stuff as the season progresses. So I appreciate you guys. Until next time, I'll check you guys later.